Welcome back. More than 13,000 criminal migrants have been apprehended at the wide-open southern border so far this year. According to new Customs and Border Patrol data, that's more than 5 times as many encounters in 2020 than in 2020. Border Patrol Chief Jason Owens revealing agents arrested 7 previously convicted sex offenders attempting to enter the country illegally. That's just in one weekend. Joining me now, Wisconsin Congressman Bryan Steil. He's the chairman of the House Administration Committee and a member of the House Financial Services Committee. Congressman, there's also a new report from the Institute for Reforming Government showing a significant strain on local resources for the small Wisconsin city of Whitewater after the arrival of more than 1,000 illegal migrants. Can you give us your thoughts on all of this?
The city of Whitewater is a city of about 15,000 people that has seen over 1,000 migrants arrive over the past 2 years, primarily from Nicaragua and Venezuela. It's had a huge impact on the community, in particular a massive drain on key resources for first responders in the school district. You can imagine when a school district of about 2,000 students adds 200 students over the course of 2 years, many who only speak Spanish and others who only have an age that doesn't match their grade. Think of a 5th grade boy with a 3rd grade education that only speaks Spanish. It's a huge strain on the resources in the city. And then we've also seen other drug and other criminal elements that have come in. In particular, we've seen over $250,000 leave the small city of Whitewater and ultimately be transferred to the Gulf cartel in Mexico. The bottom line here, Maria, is that the border policies of President Biden is impacting small communities and communities across the country. It's all the more reason that at the end of the day, we must secure the border.
Well, I mean, look, we are unfortunately watching the ramifications of all of this, and we've unfortunately been talking about 2 or 3 specific murders from illegal migrants. And we've got the picture of this lovely 12-year-old girl from Texas. We've got the pictures of the mother of 5. We've got the picture of Lake and Riley before these 2. When are we going to actually hear a reaction or an acknowledgement of all of this from the Biden administration? Remember, just a couple of years ago, they were bragging that they actually overturned all of Trump's border protections. Here's Alejandro Mayorkas in 2021. Watch this.
We have rescinded so many Trump immigration policies. It would take so much time to list them.
It's too much time to list them, Congressman.
This administration came in and from day one had a policy of unsecuring the U.S.-Mexico border. We should be working to secure the U.S.-Mexico borders. The policies of the Biden administration have continuously moved us in the wrong direction. Our national media often focuses on our nation's largest cities and the challenges that we see in places like New York or Chicago or Denver. But the impact that this is having in communities across the country can't be overstated. The Democrats want to hide from this. They want to put their head in the sand. We saw in the report from IRG, uncovered by Jake Curtis, showing that when Democrats were meeting on this topic, they encouraged people to avoid the press. What we should be doing is having an adult conversation about what we need to do to secure the border. And today, President Biden has the authority to do that. He has the ability to reinstate stay in Mexico, end the abuse of the parole system, stop catch and release, restart border wall construction. He refuses to do that because the policies of this administration are to allow countless individuals into the country. And as you correctly noted, not only in that group, there are criminal elements that have arrived. We've seen individuals who are on the terror watch list who've come across the country. Amongst the hundreds of thousands of individuals that we call gotaways, we don't even know who they are, Maria. This is a security risk for the country. The Biden administration refuses to act.
And why? Why do you think that is?
Well, it's clearly a policy that they're trying to allow hundreds of thousands or millions of individuals into the country. The president is not interested in enforcing our immigration laws. And then further, we look more broadly as to the political ramifications of the hundreds of thousands of people coming into the country. My committee, the Committee on House Administration, recently passed legislation that will actually ensure that we avoid non-citizens from voting in U.S. elections. We're going to have an opportunity to bring that to the floor of the House in the coming weeks. It's absolutely essential that we do not allow the Biden administration to allow non-citizens to vote. But what we see time and again is Biden and this administration working to undermine the core principles and core laws of the United States of America.
By the way, there are many people who say they're doing that right now. I mean, you know, there's the speculation of this flyer at the border who, you know, the woman's name on the flyer where it says, don't forget to vote for Joe Biden. We need 4 more years of Joe Biden, to all of the people coming into the country through the border. She says she didn't write it. So we don't know what this memo is and if it's real or not real. But Claudia Tenney was on this program the other day. Ken Paxton was with me on Sunday. They both say, yes, that's what the Democrats are doing. They're trying in whatever way they can to get illegals to vote. Could that be the case, even though this is illegal?
Well, look at what's playing out right now in our nation's capital, the front door of the entire country. Not only under current law in Washington, D.C., can a non-citizen vote in municipal elections, the Democrats in Washington, D.C. are encouraging them to vote. So just to put that into perspective, this could be an illegal immigrant. It could be a Russian embassy worker who has the ability, if they simply reside in our nation's capital for 30 days, to vote in the upcoming November elections for positions like city council. In my opinion, U.S. elections should only be for U.S. citizens, yet we have to reform the laws to make sure that we're doing that at the state and municipal level, and then we have to enforce that at the federal level, because there's significant concerns that non-citizens are participating in our election process. We recently saw in Ohio where non-citizens were on the voter rolls. We saw challenges and problems in Pennsylvania. And so it's incumbent upon us as we approach November to make sure that we are enhancing the integrity of our elections, and we can do that by making sure that only U.S. citizens are voting in our elections.
Ken,
I do, but sir, help me understand this. I just don't understand how non-U.S. citizens even have the opportunity to vote. Like, where are we when you say we have to change the law? What law currently allows them to vote?
And what are you doing about it?
Right, and what is the Republican Party doing about it?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are shocked when they learn what's going on in cities and states across the country that are allowing non-citizens to vote in municipal elections.
Yeah, like
Washington, the House of Representatives passed a law over. The House of Representatives passed a law overturning the D.C. law. The Senate refuses to ask. Everybody should ask their Democratic senator why the Senate is refusing to move that legislation forward.
Yeah. Let me get your take on whether or not this comes up at the debate. A campaign spokesperson for former President Trump said yesterday that he's opting to, quote, policy discussions with close allies and advisors to prepare for the debate, the CNN presidential debate tomorrow, instead of mock debates and Q&A sessions. President Biden has been hiding away at Camp David. He's been preparing with 16 advisors. CNN is also reporting several, quote, top Democrats have issued warnings, stark warnings to President Biden's camp, urging them to spend more time going directly after former President Trump and less time, if any, pointing to the president's policy record. They write, the reason is simple. Talking about Biden's policy achievements is not resonating with voters. No kidding, Congressman.
The Biden policies have been clobbering people. It could be the unsecure U.S.-Mexico border, or it could be all of the economic policies that this administration has put forward that has made everything roughly 20% more expensive from when he took office. The median mortgage went from $1,200 to $2,400. At the same time, rent is rising. Grocery bills are higher. Car prices are higher. It's harder to insure your car. And so the Biden administration wants to do anything except talk about the real impact that their economic policies have had. They continue to play gimmicks. They try to do giveaways to key political groups, like the student loan giveaway that they're trying to drive forward, which is unconstitutional, unfair, and political. But if we have a debate this week about the Biden policies and the impact that they're having on families, the American people are going to walk away clearly knowing that we need to reelect President Trump, and we can't allow President Biden to have 4 more years in office.
Yeah, Karine, let me get your take on that real quick, because if Joe Biden does not talk about the policies, his policies, what he's done, and what he wants to do, I think he fails that debate. You've got to look ahead. And President Trump as well. He can't look back. He's got to look ahead. People want to know, what are you going to do in the next 4 years? And Biden's camp is telling him, don't go there. Just attack Trump.
Which is telling. There's really not much to build on there. It's going to be hard to tell Americans that your life is great when Americans are saying, no, our life is not great. And we missed 4 years ago. That's what all the polling is showing. I think for President Trump, this creates an opportunity to rein it in and just focus on the future and on his record, and not descend into the type of personality squabbles that Biden wants to make this all about. That's what he wants out of this debate.
Well, we'll see. Congressman, we'll all be watching. And, of course, we want to get your take afterwards. Good to see you this morning, sir. Thank you.